I mean, you guys argue in this book that the narrative surrounding vaccines is starting to crumble. It was once untouchable, and now people are starting to ask real questions. What do you say?
Boy, the capstone on this entire vaccine controversy was the COVID-19 vaccine campaign. And in our book, we have these various epochs of time, and the epoch that the COVID vaccines have fallen into is called the epoch of bio warfare or bioweapons. And indeed, that's what's going on. And so, John Leake went back to essentially the very beginning. And, his research and my contributions led us to conclude that what happened with the COVID-19 vaccine was building upon prior history.
Yep. And you guys look at that history in this book in a way that I think desperately needed to be done. I stumbled across some of this in 2009 with the swine flu hysteria, but not a lot of people were talking about it. In the book, you actually talk about how a lot of the supposedly incredible achievements that came about from vaccines are actually better attributed to like better sanitation and basic things like that. John, what did you find when you did a deep dive into the history of vaccinations? I mean, how did they get to be this thing that like you can't ask questions and we have to mandate them and that everybody needs liability immunity? I mean, how did we get from original research to where we are today?
I mean, it's notable that the American Academy of Pediatrics wants to remove religious exemptions to children receiving the vaccines on the childhood schedule. And when I go back and look at the whole history of this, going back to the 18th century, what I would suggest is that the American Pediatrics has itself erected a sort of religious cult around vaccination, and it doesn't want any other kind of religious sentiment competing with its own cult. I mean, if you go back to the 18th century, and we start with the smallpox outbreak in Boston, Massachusetts in 1721, what we see is that very quickly, and speaking in the early 19th century, it wasn't vaccination, it was what was generally referred to as an inoculation procedure, in which you take a little bit of disease-causing matter from a smallpox pustule, you make an incision in a healthy person's arm, and then rub a little bit of the the disease-causing matter in that wound in order to inoculate. The idea was introduce just a little bit of poison, and that will render the recipient immune from more severe illness. So that idea was quickly perceived as something like a method of protection that was almost conceived as having a mystical significance. And it's notable that the foremost advocate of this early smallpox inoculation procedure in Boston was Cotton Mather, who was first and foremost a Puritan minister and theologian. And he expressly stated in a Boston newspaper that he perceived this inoculation procedure to be a gift from God. And that kind of archetypal, what I would call sort of religious thinking, has really characterized the vaccine enterprise for all 300 years. I mean, between 1721 and 2021.